Hello guys and welcome back to Mapper Extreme. Today we're going to be looking at a new scenario. As you can see, this is Auggisto WICSO's app. Shout out to him. And this is actually his World War One map. Today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where the Turks and their alliance win the war. Probably not going to be able to fit the whole war in if I'm being honest. So I'm going to do two parts for this, hopefully not three. But without further ado, let's get started. So firstly, I'm going to have before the war some Russians' industrial capacities to be sabotaged by the Crimeans and the Uzbeks. I don't know what they're going to call this. Kazakhstan? Yeah, Kazakhs. I want them to kind of sabotage Russia a bit with Turkish help, obviously, to kind of slow them down. Secondly, I want to strengthen this country even more than our timeline. And our timeline got an amazing deal. Now I'm going to strengthen even more. And on top of that, I want the colonial powers, more specifically Britain or England, to lean to the Turkish side. Also, one last thing before we start off, I want the Indian incursion into Bengal to be a lot more disastrous, with the ethnic Bengali religious populations on this side being more anti to India. Without further ado, let's start off this scenario. So, in the real timeline, the war started off with the oops, with the kind of anti-war uprising in this region taking place right here, and of course it gets pushed back by the Turks. But the POWs from here, or some of them that escape, flee up north to Prussia, which is an ally of Russia. So that so then they harbor them all, and that becomes like a kind of that's the worst stuff. I'm gonna have it start the same way. I'm not gonna change that. But we want to make Romania weaker. I want some ethnic tensions to continue up the east and the west, and actually want Turkey to fund them, including bribing these to Croatia and Montenegro. Without further ado, let's start this war. So Turkey will actually be starting this off by launching an invasion into, what is this country called? Romania? Yeah. So Turkish troops will begin advancing into Romania with using help from ethnic Bulgars. The Turks will get a massive distance. Top of that, Crimea was actually prepared for this. As the Turks stacked the troops in the region, so the Crimean forces will begin an offensive into Romania, as well as fortifying the north, so Russia can barely break through. Obviously, it's Russia. It's Russia. They're gonna break through a little bit, but you're kidding me, bro. There, Russia's gonna break through a little bit, but not that much. I see a Russian offensive towards modern-day Rostov to fail, and the Russians to lose a lot of forces in that. Well, meanwhile, up here, the one place Russians do have a pretty decent amount of success, actually, is in, what's this place called? Oh yeah, Kazakhstan, I think. So Russia's offensive in Kazakhstan will pay off, as Turkish troops have a lot less time. It's kind of like the Belgium in our timeline, so their job is just to be a roadblock, just block them off. I don't think that's what Belgium really did. Actually, it is. It's a roadblock. So anyway, as these guys advance into Kazakhstan, we will see the Turkish get reinforcements, or are these guys called Kazakhs? I'm not good with their names if you can't tell. The Kazakhs get reinforcements from Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. Well, meanwhile, East Persia, they're fucked. That's all I'm gonna say. Uh, Quickly, we see forces from Persia enter into them, beginning to take him out with ease. these guys, they put up a good defense. Honestly, I found a name for them, the Ghaznavids. If you don't know what the Ghaznavids are, they were an an Afghani dynasty which controlled this part of land. So Turkmenistan and Persia will begin rapidly advancing against the Ghaznavids, taking lands in the north, pushing Turkish chances to victory a lot higher. One thing I don't want to do is for India to enter the war this soon. Obviously, they're kind of tempted, not gonna lie, but I just don't want it to happen. And give me a minute while I make the lines colors. Here we go. One country I forgot to talk about, which is absolutely cooked in this, is, what are these guys called? Azerbaijan. I'll be real. I'll just save them the misery. They're not surviving that. So now there's a direct route linking Turkey all the way to Persia, which will make the offensive a lot better as Turkey has a lot of reserves, now taking over eastern Afghanistan, reaching the city of Herat. Kabul, I think, would probably be down south. At this point, Afghanistan does what they do best, and they don't surrender. Yeah, you thought I was going to make a French joke. No, these guys are French. They don't eat baguettes all day. They're going to keep fighting. So obviously this exhausts Persia a bit, but eventually they're going to win. I'm just not going to show it now. But here are what the front lines look like by the time we move on. Next, moving on over to here, Romania is having a lot of trouble pushing back the Turks as a majority of our army is focused here. And now we see the revolt happening. A Hungarian revolt, if you know what I mean. So the Hungarians begin revolting from Romania's control, quickly seizing control of these territories. And they begin pushing out, trying to gain independence for their kingdom. Next, I'm actually going to see these guys join up with Turkey. Their alliance is not going to be joining them. It's just going to be these two. So then it's wraps for these guys, Romania, because like the half the world is fighting them at this point, including their own allies. Can you guys see this color? Wait, let me just make it a bit more light. There. Meanwhile, down to the south, we also see Montenegro begins advancing. Now this is spelling the end for Romania, as Hungarian nationalists also reach up north and begin taking land. Following this, the more Russian, Baltic kind of populations also start their own revolt here. Now this isn't Prussian occupied territory, it's just a revolt. And now Russia is needing to kind of friction out. They get desperate and they launch a major offensive into Crimea, briefly overwhelming Crimean defenses and beginning to push deep into the Crimean countryside. But the loss ratio is just not enough for Russia to handle, as they're severely backfooted now, having to send their military to help their allies literally everywhere. Meanwhile, the Uzbeks start their own invasion up into the Anyway, what was I saying? Up into the north, with the Uzbek forces quickly managing to gain control of the useless land in Siberia. Actually, now that I think about it, they wouldn't occupy it. They know Russia also wouldn't, so they're just sending troops to help out. Now, these troops aren't exactly good troops, but nonetheless, they're still effective, pushing the Russians back on the front line, which they don't prioritize. But frontline Russia kind of does prioritize, is going well for them. I mean, not as well as you'd hoped for if you're a Russian fan, but yeah, it's fine. So Russia will continue their expansion down there, while meanwhile, Poland actually Prussia begins to occupy Polish territories. One, because there's a strong Prussian minority, and two, because they see the Romanian government as weak, being unable to hold them. This leads to Russia being infuriated and actually threatening to invade Prussia itself. This makes Prussia kind of mad, so you know what Prussia decides to do? Bye-bye. just leaves the war, and the Allies, they're fine with this. They're gonna let it happen. So as it progresses, what first to fall will be Romania. As Turkish forces reach the capital, and then they capitulate like this over here. Then, following this, Russian forces will be pushed out of Crimea, and then the Crimean forces will begin pushing into Russia along with help from the Turks. Now connect these front lines up and begin expanding. Following this, Russia is forced to retreat fully from Kazakhstan, ending any Russian occupation of the land. This is embarrassing. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. And no. And now Russian force or Turkish forces will begin pushing up into Russia proper. Oops, not yet. And eventually Russia, they're stupid, but not that stupid. As all their allies across the world fall, Russia makes a choice to surrender over to Turkey. And that ends a war of two thrones. And in the peace treaty, in 3, 2, 1. And here is the final treaty. Firstly, starting off in Europe, we see Turkey annexes southern Bulgaria, Croatia and Montenegro annex parts of Romania or former Romania. Hungary gains independence. Romania kind of looks like World War I Romania. We see this kind of Eastern Polish state. Poland actually does gain this much land, I think. We see Ukraine gains land from Romania and from Russia over here. We see the Turks create a puppet state in Caucasia. We see that Finland gains Finnish-controlled territories in Russia. Novgorod gains independence.